The night was electric, but not in the way anyone expected. The New Frontier Hotel, a sleek and modern marvel on the Las Vegas Strip, was buzzing with excitement. Inside the Venus Room, a 1,000-seat showroom adorned with dazzling lights and a massive stage. A crowd of middle-aged gamblers and tourists filled the seats. They were here to see Freddie Martin's orchestra and comedian Shecky Greene. But there was a new name on the bill that no one quite understood: Elvis Presley. Elvis was just 21, a greasy-haired, flashy-dressing kid from Memphis who had set the country on fire with his wild music and even wilder stage presence. But in Vegas, he was an unknown quantity. Most of the audience had never heard of him, and those who had probably thought he was just another passing fad. They were here for the familiar, the comfortable, the kind of entertainment that Vegas was known for. Big band music, stand-up comedy, and glamorous showgirls. The show started with Freddie Martin's orchestra. The room filled with the smooth, polished sound of Tchaikovsky's concerto in B-flat, followed by a medley of songs from the musical Oklahoma. The crowd clapped politely, sipping their cocktails and chatting among themselves. Next up was Shecky Greene, a raucous comedian who had the audience in stitches with his off-the-cuff jokes and irreverent humor. But when Elvis Presley took the stage, the atmosphere shifted. Elvis stepped out in a black leather jacket, his hair slicked back and his eyes full of nervous energy. He was backed by his three-piece band guitarist Scotty Moore, bassist Bill Black, and drummer DJ Fontana. The first notes of Heartbreak Hotel rang out, but the audience remained skeptical. This wasn't the kind of music they were used to. Elvis's voice was raw and powerful, his movements intense and almost uncontrollable. He gyrated and shook, his hips moving in a way that made the older audience members shift uncomfortably in their seats. "Hey, what is all this yelling and noise?" A high roller at ringside shouted, getting up and storming out of the room. The critics in the audience weren't much kinder. One wrote, "Elvis Presley, coming in on a wing of advance hoopla, doesn't hit the mark here. The loud braying of the tunes which rocketed him to the big time is wearing, and the applause comes back edged with a polite sound. For the teenagers, he's a whiz. For the average Vegas spender, a fizz." Elvis was visibly shaken. He had never faced an audience like this before. In Memphis and across the South, his shows were electric, filled with screaming fans and pandemonium. But here in Vegas, he was a fish out of water. He tried to connect with the crowd, cracking jokes and changing lyrics to Heartburn Motel to get a laugh, but the audience remained distant. After just 12 minutes, his set was over, but Elvis's real fans were waiting. The New Frontier had scheduled a special Saturday matinee for the teenagers who weren't allowed into the evening shows. For $1, they could see their hero up close. The room was packed and the energy was electric. When Elvis stepped onto the stage, the crowd erupted in a frenzy. They pushed and shoved to get closer, screaming and shouting his name. After the show, they stormed his suite, tearing at his clothes and fighting for souvenirs. It was chaos, but it was also a glimpse of the power Elvis had over his young fans. Despite the mixed reaction, Elvis was captivated by Las Vegas. He didn't gamble much, but he explored the city, checked out other shows, and even rode the bumper cars at the last Frontier Village. He met new friends like Judy Spreckles and Vampira, and found a place where he could be himself, away from the intense scrutiny of his rising fame. One night, Elvis caught a lounge act by Freddie Bell and the Bellboys. Their up-tempo version of Hound Dog caught his attention, and he began performing it in his own shows. It would become one of his signature songs, a hit that would cement his place in music history. Elvis may not have won over the Vegas crowd that night, but he had found a city that would become a second home. He knew he would be back, and this time he would be ready to show them what he was really made of. Elvis Presley's comeback show in Las Vegas in 1969 was a huge deal. For Elvis, it was a chance to revive his career, which had been struggling due to a series of bad movies and music that no longer made the charts. For Las Vegas, it was a moment that changed everything. The International Hotel showroom, which could seat 2,000 people, was twice as big as any other venue in Vegas. Elvis's show was a grand affair, with a 6-piece band, 2 vocal groups, and a large orchestra. Colonel Parker, Elvis's manager, made sure the publicity was massive, and it worked. Over 101,000 people saw Elvis during his 4-week run, with every show sold out. Critics raved, calling Elvis supernatural, and his own resurrection. The show not only breathed new life into Elvis's career, but also transformed Las Vegas entertainment. Between Elvis's first Las Vegas appearance in 1956 and his 1969 comeback, Las Vegas had its golden age. This was a time when the city became the entertainment capital of the world. In the 1940s, a few hotels on what would become the Strip realized that big-name entertainers could draw crowds to their casinos. By the 1950s, more hotels were built, and Las Vegas became a hotspot for top stars from Hollywood, television, Broadway, and nightclubs. The 1960s saw the city's entertainment reach its peak. Non-stop flights from the East Coast made Vegas more accessible, and the rise of television provided a new pool of stars to perform in the showroom. One of the most significant events of this era was the Rat Pack shows at the Sands Hotel in 1960. Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop performed together, creating a sensation. Their shows were the hottest tickets in town, attracting celebrities and even presidential candidates like John F. Kennedy. The Rat Pack's performances embodied the cool, glamorous image of Las Vegas. The entertainment lineup in Las Vegas during the 1960s was incredible. You could see a wide range of stars on any given week. For example, in the last week of June 1964, you could catch George Burns and Jane Russell at the Riviera, Donald O'Connor at the Sahara, Red Skelton at the Sands, Ella Fitzgerald at the Flamingo, and Morris Chevalier at the Desert Inn. Smaller lounges featured acts like Sarah Vaughan, Don Rickles, and Jerry Colina. There were also lavish production shows and Broadway musicals. Las Vegas in the 1960s was a small town with a big personality. The entertainers were friendly and often hung out together. They would attend each other's shows and even fill in if someone couldn't perform. Sammy Davis Jr. hosted all-night parties, and stars like Sid Caris and Tony Martin would mingle with the crowd in the casino. The hotels treated the stars like royalty, providing them with luxurious suites, food, and drink. It was a world where the stars and the audience dressed up, and the showgirls added to the glamour. Despite its success, Las Vegas entertainment didn't always get the respect it deserved. Critics often dismissed it as kitschy and sentimental. Shows were known for their syrupy songs, stale jokes, and over-the-top performances. Even famous writers like Ron Rosenbaum and Hunter Thompson poked fun at the city. Wayne Newton, known as Mr. Las Vegas, was a local star who became a Vegas icon, even if some outsiders found him hard to understand. But there was something special about Vegas entertainment. The shows were big, bold, and full of energy. Comedians were fast and loud, and singers connected with the audience, making them feel part of the show. The intimacy and informality of the performances made people feel like they were part of a fun, exclusive club. Las Vegas in the 1960s was a place where the biggest stars and the most glamorous shows came together to create a unique and unforgettable experience. Vegas entertainment was all about making the audience feel comfortable and familiar. It never tried to be too edgy or disruptive. Dennis Klein, a TV comedy writer who worked on shows like Mary Hartman, and The Larry Sanders Show, started his career writing jokes for Vegas comics like Jack Carter and Pat Henry. He said, "Vegas is about smoothing out the rough edges, doing only what you think the audience wants or expects. But Vegas also had a wild side." Comedians like Buddy Hackett and Don Rickles used words and jokes that you'd never hear on TV. In 1957, the Dunes Hotel pushed the boundaries even further by introducing Minsky's Follies, a show with topless dancers. This was a big deal for the conservative 1950s. Other shows like the Lido de Paris and Foley's Berger followed, making bare-breasted dancers a common sight in Vegas. It was a way for middle America to experience something a bit naughty, helping to loosen the strict rules of the Eisenhower era. By the late 1960s, though, Vegas was starting to look old-fashioned. The Beatles had arrived, the counterculture was on the rise, and the era of sex, drugs, and rock and roll was in full swing. Vegas tried to keep up by covering a few Beatles songs, but they mostly stuck to the old pop standards from Tin Pan Alley and Broadway. The big rock stars of the time, like the Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, and Janis Joplin, didn't want anything to do with Vegas. Even the hip young comedians like George Carlin and Richard Pryor found Vegas too strict and left in frustration. Vegas itself was changing. In 1967, Howard Hughes started buying up hotels on the Strip, replacing the old mob bosses with a more cost-conscious corporate approach. Caesar's Palace opened in 1966, the first of the themed hotels that would transform the Strip into a family-friendly tourist destination. Frank Sinatra, once the coolest guy in show business, was losing his appeal. His mob ties were causing problems, and he was being replaced by a new generation of singers who wrote their own songs and were seen as anti-establishment rebels. In this changing landscape, Las Vegas turned to Elvis Presley to help reinvent itself. Elvis's 1969 comeback show at the International Hotel, later the Las Vegas Hilton, was a huge success. He performed every 6 months for the next 7 years, bringing in visitors from all over the world and boosting business throughout the city. However, Elvis's time in Vegas was also marked by his decline. He gained weight, used drugs, and became isolated in his penthouse suite. His performances grew less disciplined, and by the time of his death in 1977, he was a shadow of his former self. But for those first few years, Elvis was at his best. He was trim, handsome, and his voice was richer than ever. He reinvented himself, expanding his range to include country, rhythm and blues, and even gospel. Elvis's show at the International Hotel set a new standard for Vegas entertainment. He was paid a record $125,000 a week, and his performances were big, elaborate affairs. He showed that Vegas audiences could enjoy a wider range of music, and paved the way for other big stars like Cher, Dolly Parton, and later, Celine Dion and Elton John. Elvis also attracted a new kind of audience to Vegas. His fans were middle-class families and housewives who had grown up loving him. They came to Vegas for a special vacation, and this helped transform the city from a gambling and nightclub town into a family-friendly destination. Elvis may have left the building, but his influence on Las Vegas is still felt today. From the Elvis impersonators and wedding chapels to the tribute shows and festivals, he remains a significant part of the city's identity. The Las Vegas Valley, with its freshwater springs, was a popular stop for travelers heading to California in the 1800s. The Mormons even set up a mission there in the 1850s, but it didn't last long. It wasn't until 1905 that the town of Las Vegas was officially incorporated, becoming a major division point on the railroad connecting Salt Lake City and Los Angeles. The town grew slowly, but it started to market itself to tourists with its hotels, saloons, and houses of prostitution. In 1931, 2 events changed Las Vegas forever. Nevada legalized gambling, and construction began on the Hoover Dam. The dam project brought thousands of workers to the area, and Las Vegas, with its casinos and nightlife, became a place for them to relax and spend their money. The first top-flight entertainment venue was the Meadows Club, opened in 1931 by 2 bootleggers from Los Angeles. They hired a Broadway producer to book entertainment, and the opening night featured music by Jack Little and his band, the Meadow Larks. The Gum Sisters, including a young Judy Garland, also performed there. However, the Meadows Club burned down a few months later, and the owners sold it. Las Vegas looked for other ways to attract visitors. In 1935, the city hosted the first El Dorado Days, a festival celebrating its Western heritage. Hollywood stars like Clara Bow and Clark Gable also discovered Las Vegas, and the town's liberalized divorce laws, 6 weeks of residency, brought in more visitors. In 1940, Thomas Hull, a hotel man from San Diego, decided to build a first-class resort hotel just outside the city limits to avoid city taxes. He called it El Rancho Vegas. The hotel had a casino, swimming pool, and a windmill with neon lights that served as a beacon for travelers. Its grand opening in 1941 featured Frank Fay and Garwood Van's orchestra. Other acts followed, bringing first-class entertainment to Las Vegas. El Rancho's success attracted a competitor. In 1942, Ree Griffith opened The Last Frontier, a mile south of El Rancho. He hired Maxine Lewis to book acts, and she brought in well-known entertainers like Burt Wheeler and Jimmy Wakely. Her biggest coup was hiring Sophie Tucker, a famous vaudeville star, for a 2-week engagement in 1944. Tucker's arrival was a big deal, and it marked Las Vegas' entry into the world of top-tier entertainment. The hotel had a casino, swimming pool, and a windmill with neon lights that served as a beacon for travelers. Its grand opening in 1942 featured Frank Fay and Garwood Van's orchestra. Other acts followed, bringing first-class entertainment to Las Vegas. El Rancho's success attracted a competitor. In 1943, Ree Griffith opened The Last Frontier, a mile south of El Rancho. He hired Maxine Lewis to book acts, and she brought in well-known entertainers like Burt Wheeler and Jimmy Wakely. Her biggest coup was hiring Sophie Tucker, a famous vaudeville star, for a 2-week engagement in 1944. World War II brought a temporary halt to hotel construction, but it didn't stop Las Vegas from growing. A magnesium plant was built in nearby Henderson, and an Air Force flight training facility opened just north of the city. The workers and military personnel provided more customers for the town's clubs and casinos. By the end of the war, Las Vegas was ready for its next big leap forward. The mob saw the potential in Las Vegas. Bugsy Siegel, a New York gangster, moved to Los Angeles in the 1930s and became a fixture in the Hollywood scene. In 1941, he was sent to Las Vegas to take control of the local race betting operations. He saw the potential in the booming gambling town and came up with the idea of opening a luxury resort. The Flamingo was originally being built by Billy Wilkerson, an LA nightclub owner. When Wilkerson ran out of money, Siegel convinced his mob partners to invest $1 million in the project. He took over and spent lavishly, paying premium prices for materials and overtime to get the hotel ready by Christmas 1946. The Flamingo opened on December 26, 1946, and it was different from the other hotels. It had a modern design with sleek lines and pastel colors. Inside, the casino was the center of attention, with no windows or clocks to keep the gambling going nonstop. The Flamingo set the stage for the future of Las Vegas, and it marked the beginning of the mob's influence on the city. The night was rainy, but that didn't stop the excitement at the opening of the Flamingo. Bugsy Siegel, the man behind the project, had pulled out all the stops. Jimmy Durante, a famous comedian, was there, along with MC George Jessel, singer Rosemary, and Xavier Cugat's orchestra. Despite the weather, the opening was a star-studded event. The Associated Press reporter Bob Thomas described the town as transformed into a luxurious playground. However, the glamour didn't last long. After the grand opening, the Flamingo's guest numbers started to drop. The hotel was only half finished, so Siegel decided to close it for 4 weeks to complete the construction. Rosemary remembered how the dining room went from being packed to having only 9 or 10 people. When the Flamingo reopened in March, it was even more luxurious, but Siegel's spending had gone way over budget, from $1,500,000 to $6 million. This made his bosses in the East very unhappy. They suspected that Siegel was keeping some of the money for himself, and that his girlfriend Virginia Hill was sending it to Swiss bank accounts. Whether true or not, Siegel's time as a Las Vegas entrepreneur was cut short. On June 20, 1947, he was shot dead in Virginia Hill's Beverly Hills home. Under new management, the Flamingo continued to thrive, setting the pace for Vegas glamour. Maxine Lewis, the entertainment director, booked big names like the Andrews Sisters, Abbott and Costello, Lena Horne, and the comedy duo Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis. The Flamingo's success forced its competitors to step up their game. El Rancho booked acts like the Ritz Brothers and Joe E. Lewis, while The Last Frontier introduced a flamboyant pianist named Walter Liberace, who would become one of Vegas' biggest stars. Despite the big-name entertainers, Las Vegas still had a small-town, Old West feel. Fremont Street downtown had a honky-tonk charm, and the few hotels along Route 91 were spread out in the desert. Tourists and locals enjoyed the cheap, all-you-can-eat buffets. Mel Torme, who performed at El Rancho in 1946, said the city felt like an old western town, but the town was growing. In 1948, the Thunderbird opened, featuring Nat King Cole and Ella Fitzgerald. In 1950, Wilbur Clark opened the Desert Inn, the most elegant resort on the Strip. Wilbur Clark, a former bellhop and craps dealer, started building the Desert Inn in 1946, but ran out of money. He finished the project with help from investors led by Mo Dalitz, a known racketeer. The Desert Inn was a modern pleasure palace, with a curved swimming pool and a panoramic bar. Its opening in April 1950 was a huge event, with Edgar Bergen and Charlie McCarthy as the headliners. This marked a turning point for Las Vegas, solidifying its reputation as an entertainment and gambling hub. Organized crime played a significant role in Vegas. The mob saw the casinos as a way to launder money and skim profits. The mob's presence was widely known but accepted, as they invested in the city and brought in top entertainment. However, in November 1950, Senator Estes Kefauver brought his hearings on organized crime to Las Vegas. Wilbur Clark testified, denying any knowledge of the investors' criminal backgrounds. The hearings didn't have much immediate impact, but they did highlight the mob's involvement, which made Vegas more attractive as a safe zone for gambling. By late 1952, Las Vegas was booming. 2 more hotels opened, the Sahara in October and the Sands in December. The Sands, owned by Texas oilman Jake Friedman and run by Jack Entratter, a former manager of New York's Copacabana, became the premier entertainment venue. The opening was a 4-day extravaganza, with Danny Thomas as the headliner. When Thomas had to cancel, Jimmy Durante, Frankie Lane, Jane Powell, and the Ritz brothers filled in. Entratter brought in top talent from New York, including Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, and Jerry Lewis. The Sahara, to compete, hired Bill Miller, a vaudeville performer and nightclub owner, to find new attractions. Ray Balger, Mae West, and Marlene Dietrich were among the Sahara's headliners. Dietrich's debut caused a sensation with her revealing dress, earning her a standing ovation. By 1953, Las Vegas was a major entertainment center. The city's population had grown to 43,000, and 8 million tourists visited annually. 7 resort hotels lined the Strip, and top entertainers filled the showrooms. Las Vegas had a business model where hotels paid top salaries to stars using casino profits. This allowed them to offer shows for free or at a minimal cost, something no other city could match. Concerns arose about the high salaries and the limited pool of talent. In 1950, casino owners considered centralizing booking to avoid bidding wars, but this led to threats from performers and agents. The city found new ways to attract talent, booking TV stars during their summer breaks and Hollywood stars looking for a comeback. Virtually every top nightclub singer performed in Vegas. Some bookings were unusual. Ronald Reagan, a struggling actor, debuted a nightclub act at the Last Frontier, which was a flop. Tallulah Bankhead, a Broadway diva, performed a show at the Sands, and Noel Coward, a British playwright, had a successful run at the Desert Inn. By the mid-1950s, Las Vegas was known as a gambling capital, celebrity playground, mob hangout, and entertainment Valhalla. Hollywood stars came to get married, and the city became a popular filming location. The atomic bomb tests in Nevada became another tourist attraction, with hotels organizing viewing parties. The shows followed a standard format, an opening number with showgirls, an opening act, and the headliner. The goal was to keep patrons in the casino, leading to the invention of the lounge show. Vegas radiated glamour, excitement, and good times, becoming a symbol of post-war prosperity and optimism. In the early days of Las Vegas, most hotels had bar lounge areas right next to the casino. These places had a small stage where music groups played. At first, the music was just background noise for the gambling. But then, some hotel operators realized that the lounge entertainment could be a big draw, keeping people in the casino all night long. One of the first acts to really make the lounge a hit was the Mary Kay Trio. The trio was made up of Mary Kay Collihew, her brother Norman, and comedian Frank Ross. They were playing at the Last Frontier Hotel in 1953, when the hotel decided to move them to the Gay 90s Lounge. At the time, the lounge couldn't have singing or talking because that would mean the casino had to pay a 20% entertainment tax. To get around this, the Last Frontier put up a curtain to separate the lounge from the casino. This way, Mary Kay and her group could do their full act. The trio's act was a mix of bright, upbeat music and comedy. Frank Ross, who played the accordion and added jokes, was the star of the show. He would improvise, do parodies of their songs, and interact with the audience. He'd make fun of people in the crowd, like a guy at the bar, and the audience loved it. By the third night, the place was packed. People were coming in after midnight, and the chorus girls from the main room would join in. It was the first real lounge act, and it set the standard for what would come next. The Mary Kay Trio's style improvisation, music mixed with comedy, and audience interaction became the hallmark of Vegas lounge entertainment. People could shout out requests, joke with the performers, and feel like they were part of a big, fun party. It was a place where there were no walls between the performers and the audience, no pretense, and no script. The lounges became a place of freedom, where entertainers could experiment and try new things. One of the groups that took advantage of this freedom was Freddie Bell and the Bellboys. They introduced Elvis to Hound Dog in 1956, and their act was full of rock and roll energy. Another influential group was the Treniers, a black group that mixed rhythm and blues with swing. They had a playful, energetic act with lots of synchronized choreography and funny stage business. They were so popular that people would come to see them when they were feeling down, and they'd leave feeling great. However, not everything was smooth sailing for black entertainers in Vegas. The city was segregated, and black performers couldn't stay in the hotels, eat in the restaurants, or gamble in the casinos. They had to use the kitchen entrances and stay in run-down motels on the west side. This was a concession to the southern gamblers, who made up a large part of the clientele. Some black entertainers, like Josephine Baker and Harry Belafonte, fought against this discrimination. Baker demanded that black people be allowed to attend her shows, and Belafonte refused to stay in a subpar motel, eventually getting a room at the hotel where he was performing. In 1955, the Moulin Rouge opened as the first integrated hotel in Vegas. It was a luxury hotel with top-notch entertainment, and it drew big crowds from both sides of the city. However, it faced many challenges. 2 nights after it opened, a sax player named Wardell Gray was murdered, and the hotel closed after just 6 months, under mysterious circumstances. Some said it was due to financial mismanagement, while others believed the strip hotels were behind its closure, upset at losing business. Despite the challenges, Vegas continued to evolve. To attract more people, the city started looking to Paris for inspiration. The French music hall revues, like those at the Folies Berger and Le Lido, were famous for their elaborate shows with topless dancers and a mix of variety acts. In 1958, the Stardust Hotel brought the Lido de Paris show to Vegas. It was a grand production with a chorus line of Bluebell girls, acrobats, and even an ice skating display. The show was a hit, and it brought a new level of glamour and excitement to the Vegas lounge scene. Nudity had been part of Las Vegas shows for a while, but it wasn't always in the spotlight. In the downtown area, burlesque shows featured strippers, and Lily St. Cyr was famous for her bubble bath performances at El Rancho Vegas. But things really changed in 1957 when the Dunes Hotel brought in Minsky's Follies, a racy burlesque show from New York. This show featured topless showgirls, for the first time on a mainstream Vegas stage. It was a huge hit, and almost saved the struggling hotel. But Minsky's Follies was more about titillation, and aimed at a mostly male audience. The Lido de Paris, on the other hand, was different. It was a classy show that made nudity look tasteful and artistic. Critics and even conservative columns praised its refinement. The Lido was supposed to run for 6 months, but was so popular that it stayed for a year. Other producers quickly followed suit, adding topless girls to their shows. This new trend worried some people. Religious leaders, like Bishop Robert J. Dwyer, urged Catholics to boycott the shows. They feared that if nudity was allowed, other vices like gambling and quick divorces might become even more common. Some hotel bosses also opposed the trend, fearing it would drive away family audiences. Jack Entratter of the Sands Hotel led the opposition, saying that nude shows could ruin Las Vegas' reputation as a top entertainment destination. Despite the backlash, some hotels like the Dunes and the Stardust stood their ground. They argued that the shows were popular, and that they clearly advertised them as adult entertainment. The Tropicana, another hotel, even brought in the famous Folies Berger from Paris. This show, with its high-kicking can-can and topless mannequins, was a huge success and became a model for future Vegas shows. As the trend continued, more topless shows popped up all over Vegas. Some were sophisticated, while others were more tacky, with punny titles like Naughty and Ice and Panties Inferno. But the topless fad wasn't just about skin. It was about entertainment. Stars like Marlene Dietrich and Carol Channing objected, saying that their appeal came from suggestion, not explicit nudity. Still, the trend was here to stay. Meanwhile, the big stars continued to draw crowds. Seeing famous faces like Frank Sinatra and Milton Berle was a big part of the Vegas experience, but Vegas also created its own stars. Louis Prima and Keely Smith were one of the most popular acts. Prima, a jazz musician from New Orleans, and Smith, a singer, had a unique style. Prima was wild and energetic, while Smith was calm and pure-voiced. Their chemistry was electric, and they became known as the wildest in Vegas. They played in the Sahara Lounge, drawing huge crowds with their 5 shows a night. Another star who made Vegas his home was Liberace. Born in Wisconsin, he was a child prodigy who mixed classical and popular music in his act. He first came to Vegas in 1944 and became a favorite. When the Riviera opened in 1955, they paid him a record $50,000 a week for his grand opening performance. Liberace's show was a mix of music, glamour, and showmanship, and he became one of the most iconic figures in Vegas entertainment. These shows and stars helped define the Vegas entertainment scene, blending sophistication with a touch of the risque. Whether it was the elegant Foley's Berger or the wild energy of Louis Prima, Las Vegas was becoming a place where anything could happen, and the shows were just as much a part of the thrill as the casinos. Liberace soon found his calling, dropping his first name and creating a flamboyant, playful stage persona. He wore gaudy dinner jackets and always had a candelabra, inspired by a 1945 Chopin biopic, sitting on his grand piano. His playing style was showy and romantic, turning simple tunes like chopsticks into grand concertos. He could seamlessly transition from classical pieces, by Grieg to jazz tunes by Gershwin. Liberace once said, "I long to please the man on the street, the people who had relatively little appreciation of music." In the early 1950s, Liberace became a nationwide sensation. He recorded hit albums, played sold-out concerts, and starred in a popular TV show. His charming smile, silky voice, and over-the-top outfits made him a beloved figure, especially among middle-aged women. He was like a surrogate son, a non-threatening boyfriend, and a charming companion all in one. By 1955, when the Riviera Hotel lured him away, Liberace was pushing his image even further. For his opening act, he wore a white silk lame tuxedo designed by Christian Dior. Midway through, he changed into an even flashier dinner jacket, adorned with over 1 million sequins. His show included a mix of classical and popular music, choreographed production numbers, and even a dream sequence with a young dancer playing young Liberace. The show ran for almost 2 hours, and for his encore, he made another costume change, donning an ornate beaded black satin jacket. He told the audience, "Go ahead and laugh, you paid for it." Liberace had to keep topping himself, just like the new hotels opening in Vegas. His outfits became more outrageous, and his stage gimmicks more daring. He wore a calf-length ermine coat trimmed in diamonds, and even wired himself with twinkling lights. He drove onto the stage in a Rolls-Royce. Despite the critics who mocked his ostentatious style, Liberace knew how to connect with his audience. He said, "Finally, it was impossible to make fun of me because I was having too much fun making fun of myself." One of Liberace's early epiphanies came during a concert in La Crosse, Wisconsin. After a polite classical performance, an audience member shouted for him to play Three Little Fishies. Liberace performed it in the style of Bach, and the audience loved it. They relaxed and enjoyed themselves and smiled, he recalled. "That was the big thing for me, they smiled." Liberace's ability to make people happy made him the ideal Vegas entertainer. In April 1956, Liberace returned to the Riviera, coinciding with Elvis Presley's debut at the New Frontier Hotel. One night, Elvis's manager, Colonel Tom Parker, visited Liberace backstage. Parker asked if Liberace could help Elvis, who was having some trouble. Liberace posed for photos with Elvis and gave him advice, suggesting his act needed more glitz. This started a long friendship between the two performers. When Elvis returned to Vegas in November 1956, he saw Liberace's new show and was clearly inspired. They even posed for a famous newsreel, with Elvis wearing Liberace's gold lame jacket while playing the piano, and Liberace hamming it up with Elvis's guitar. Liberace and Elvis stayed in touch over the years. For each of Liberace's Vegas openings, Elvis sent him a bouquet of flowers in the shape of a guitar. They lived near each other in Palm Springs, and Liberace would invite Elvis and his friends over for dinner. Elvis even bought Liberace's dune buggy, complete with candelabras on each side. Elvis never forgot how Liberace made him feel comfortable when he first started in Vegas. Both Liberace and Elvis had unusual connections. Elvis was one of twins, with his brother Jesse Guerin dying at birth. This haunted Elvis, and he often visited Jesse's grave. Liberace also had a twin who died at birth, and he was born wrapped in a caul, which some cultures see as a sign of good fortune. It's unclear if they ever spoke about their similar experiences, but the coincidence adds a mystical layer to their friendship. Elvis was drawn to Las Vegas, loving the hotels, shows, and non-stop activity. He visited frequently, staying at the Sahara and seeing shows. However, his visits were cut short in 1958, when he was drafted into the Army. Meanwhile, Las Vegas faced some challenges, with new hotels opening but the city experiencing financial difficulties. Despite this, Las Vegas had secured its place as an entertainment hub, with no off-season and a dedication to entertainment unmatched anywhere else. Jack Intrater, the head of the Sands Hotel, had a commanding presence. Known as the Ziegfeld of the desert, he was a former street kid from Brooklyn who rose to prominence. He had a powerful physical presence and a soft-spoken, direct manner. Intrater was responsible for bringing the biggest stars to the Sands, including Dean Martin, Jerry Lewis, Frank Sinatra, and Nat King Cole. He even had a floating crap table installed in the Sands swimming pool for publicity. The Sands was the jewel of the Strip, with its sleek design and sprawling grounds. The Copper Room, where entertainment was presented, was intimate and exclusive. Guests entered through two curtains to block out casino light, and were greeted by a tuxedoed maitre d'. Intrater had his own table at the back, from where he could see everything. He treated his stars like family and was known for his generosity, often helping employees in need. He was a key figure in building the Sands into the premier entertainment venue in Las Vegas, ensuring the city's place as the entertainment capital of the world. Frank Sinatra's journey in Las Vegas is a tale of revival and legend. Born in 1915 in a working-class neighborhood of Hoboken, New Jersey, Sinatra burst onto the music scene in the early 1940s, becoming a heartthrob and one of the most popular singers in the country. However, by the end of the 1940s, his career was faltering. His personal life was a mess, and his public image was tarnished by rumors of mob connections and temper tantrums. Las Vegas, and specifically the Sands Hotel, became a sanctuary for Sinatra. Jack Intrater, the Sands boss, gave Sinatra a chance when others might have turned away. Sinatra made his Sands debut in 1953, drawing big crowds but receiving mixed reviews. Yet it was during this time that his career took a dramatic turn for the better. He won an Oscar for his role in From Here to Eternity and signed with Capitol Records, where he collaborated with arranger Nelson Riddle. Their first album, Songs for Young Lovers, marked a new, more mature Sinatra, one who sang with depth and emotion. Sinatra's success in Vegas wasn't just about his music. He brought a touch of New York glamour to the city, which was still known for its Wild West atmosphere. His cool, sophisticated style and impeccable performances set a new standard. He became a regular at the Sands, buying a stake in the hotel and making it his home away from home. He even helped open the Dunes Hotel, riding in on a camel, and starred in the film The Joker is Wild. But Sinatra's influence extended beyond his own performances. He was a mentor and inspiration to other singers like Vic Damone, who admired Sinatra's ability to tell a story through his songs. Even young rock and roll stars like Paul Anka and Bobby Darin looked up to him. In 1960, Sinatra's star power reached its peak when he, along with Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., Peter Lawford, and Joey Bishop, performed together at the Copper Room in the Sands. This show, known as The Summit, was a historic moment that brought the biggest names in entertainment to one stage. It was a symbol of the Rat Pack's dominance in Vegas, a group of friends who partied hard and entertained even harder. The Rat Pack, originally a group centered around Humphrey Bogart, evolved after Bogart's death. Sinatra became the new center, and his bond with Dean Martin was particularly strong. Martin, a fellow Italian-American, had a relaxed stage presence that contrasted with Sinatra's intensity. Together, they created some of the most memorable moments in Vegas history, often joining each other's shows and adding spontaneous humor to their performances. Sinatra's legacy in Las Vegas is one of resilience and charisma. He transformed a city and an industry, leaving behind a legacy that continues to inspire. His music, his style, and his spirit made him not just a star but a legend. In Las Vegas, Sinatra found a place where he could be himself, and in turn, he helped make Vegas the city of legends.